Okay. So I am going to have a conversation about a topic that has been on my spirit. It's Black History Month, and what I have recently seen, it's been stuff in social media with Africans saying, particularly Africans that have moved to America, they don't understand why Black Americans don't know their African history. So, what I want to do is start a family conversation. So, this is for Black Americans and Africans of the diaspora. If that is not you, to the left, this ain't your conversation. Okay? So, in my travels, I've had everywhere I've went outside of the U.S., particularly outside of the U.S. in the Caribbean. When I've encountered other Africans, they say, "Where are you from?" I'm like, "I'm American." They're like, "No, where are you from?" And I know what that means. It's like, "Where are you from in Africa?" And I'm kind of like, "You don't understand how the slave trade worked? We don't know where we're from." And until recently, with DNA developments, if a Black person in America wanted to trace their ancestry, it was all paper. And any history of us before we came over in slave ships does not exist. So, my African brothers and sisters, when we were loaded on slave ships, when my ancestors were loaded on slave ships in Benin, Togo, Ouida, and all these other places throughout the West African coast, one of the things that they made sure to do was to put different tribes together, particularly tribes who used to hate each other. Because the last thing they want is folks communicating about how to revolt, how to take over this ship, how to get rid of these people, how to get off this boat. So, 80% of the slave trade ended up in South America and in the Caribbean. How the slave trade was handled in South America and the Caribbean was different because you had the Spaniards, the French, and the Brits, and the Dutch. Now, typically what the Spanish and the French did was, we don't want y'all revolting, so let's intermix. You're not Black, you Spanish. You're not Black, you French. For slaves that arrived in America, we were not considered human. We were not considered human. Outside of the U.S., if a slave owner, British, French, had sex, probably raped, let's just be honest, raped a slave and had a child, that child was free. Because that child was considered an heir of the owner. So they could not be a slave because that is an heir. In the U.S., we were not considered human. 3/4, 3/5, 3/5. So in the U.S., even after the slave trade was illegal, they just bred us, raped us, so they could continue to have more slaves. Also, as I said, on the ships, people, different tribes were set next to each other. Okay? So, if you're from Cameroon, this person's from Ghana, maybe you guys didn't like each other before. You don't even speak the same language. So how do you communicate? And, particularly when they landed in the U.S., if you were acting like you understood each other, separate them. Last thing we need is for them to be communicating. No, not good. And so another thing was, particularly arriving in the U.S., they understood the importance of the drums for us. So even if we spoke different languages, you spoke Swahili, someone else spoke something else, they knew how the drum was a uniter. So no drums for us. That's why we learn to get that rhythm and get that beat, give us a tambourine. We're going to figure it out. So we come to America, my ancestors. They were all from all over West Africa. You name a West African country, they came. Now in Africa, we might have had a problem. But if we are going to survive whatever this situation is, we are no longer Mali, we are no longer Ghana, we are no longer Cameroon. We are black people in America, and we need to survive this situation. Okay? So our ancestors were all from that West African coast, and they realized that our survival depended on our unity. Additionally, any African that arrived in America and did anything resembling speaking an African language or anything to that effect was beaten or probably killed. If you haven't seen the movie Roots, you should watch it. Okay? The other thing is, you should read this book. It was about the last slave ship that came to America. The slave ship was illegal. It was after the slave trade had ended. It was illegal. These were slaves that they brought over from Nigeria. Read this book, Africans. Read this book. Most black Americans cannot do what these descendants can do. They can trace their heritage all the way back to Nigeria. Like I said, until recently, until DNA happened, and most black Americans are not paying the $100 to $300 because that's rather expensive to find out what their DNA is. Okay? Read this book. Like I said, before DNA, we only had paper trails. I tried before DNA. And the paper trails basically start with cargo, or you being an inheritance or a gift to the slave owner's wife, daughter, son. Only first names. Okay? That's the beginning. When you come to America, you need to understand, during slavery, we were told if we read or write, you either had your fingers cut off, your tongue taken out, or you'd be killed. We were promised 4 acres and a mule. As usual, America did not live up to their promise. But it didn't matter, because after slavery, we started churches. We started schools. We started colleges, HBCUs. We started universities. We started medical centers. We fought in every American war. The first person to die for America before America was a black man. They promised us freedom if we fought for them. They made tons of promises. They never kept them. But if America has a soul, it is us. Because we told America, you said in your Constitution that all men are created equal and entitled to certain inalienable rights. And we want our entitlement to those inalienable rights as listed in your Constitution. Harriet Tubman. At every turn, we fought for America to live up to its promise. Honor your Constitution. Honor the Bill of Rights. Everything good that came from America. Thank you. You're welcome. We did more than provide gospel, blues, country. How you think that banjo came over to America? That's African. That was us. You like country? You like cowboys? Say hello to cowboys. This was us. The term itself tells you it was us, because black men were never afforded the dignity of being called a man. They were called boys to denigrate them. Cowboys. The white men that supervised the cowboys were called cowhands. hands. You welcome. Where you think all that fancy roping came from? People talk about Black Wall Street. There were black centers and black enterprises in every major city. Because there was a white side of town and there was a black side of town. Black people had their own banks, their own doctors, their own dentists. They had all of it. And you know what happened? They looked at it, we want that. So they burnt our ish down. Or they flooded our towns, took our land. You didn't know? Every major accomplishment in the U.S. probably has a black person behind it. We were more than music and sports. We were involved in engineering. Look at the patents and the copyrights. That was us. We just erased. Major medical achievements. That was us. Did you not know that in medicine, during slavery, we were offered its gifts to science? They tested on us without anesthesia. That is why myths and lies and stereotypes about black skin being thicker or black people being able to take pain better than white people exist even to this day. They didn't give us anesthesia. What were we going to do? All right. My African brothers and sisters, you want to know? Don't come to America and talk about why you black Americans. Do your history. Do your history. They let you come because they know if they don't want you anymore, they can revoke your visa. Do you not know? We were thriving after Emancipation and Proclamation. We were thriving. Brother Malcolm and Martin Luther King Jr. were on a collision course to working together. Imagine what the world would look like if Brother Malcolm and MLK were alive and working together. We've always been about Africa. After we got our freedom and started churches, who do you think were the first ones to send money to Africa? Every black church had African missions. We barely out of freedom. We've always been pro-motherland. Some Africans were sent and some left and went to the Caribbean. Others went to Sierra Leone. We've always been, we love the motherland. Just didn't know what part we're from. So we claim the whole continent because we don't know. Imagine being adopted by people and them telling you that your existence before they met you did not happen. But you know you came from somewhere. We have been here. When I've traveled through Europe, and particularly recently, and I've met other African people from Ghana, Cape Verde, Angola, and other places, I'm hearing the music, and I'm like, oh my God, that is familiar. And more than familiar, it's not like I know this. I know this in my bones, in my soul, my blood knows this. The ancestors knew how to connect us. Black Americans are more than music. We are trendsetters. If there is an American culture, thank you, it is us. Where we lead, America follows. When they tried to erase our culture, we created the culture. Okay? Like I said, in the recent years, I did a DNA test. I'm from Nigeria, Benin, Togo, Cameroon, Ghana, Mali, Senegal. There's some Angolan in there, and there's a bit of South African. So when you want to know what Black American ancestry is, we are all of West Africa. Avengers, assemble. Ancestors, assemble. That's Black America, all of West Africa. That's who we are. From them trying to do everything to erase any acknowledgement of our prior history, we created a culture and an existence. Anything you think is great about America, that be us. Every immigrant group that came to the U.S. came to us. How do we survive? How do we survive in America? We helped them. America saw it and was like, oh, no. We cannot have unity among the minorities. Divide and conquer. Every minority group has been helped by Black Americans. So imagine our surprise when you come to America and you avoid us. You don't want to have nothing to do with us. You act like the other people act when they talk about us. Do you not know that after the rise of Martin Luther King Jr. and Malcolm X, that the FBI, there was a federal edict, no more Black Messiahs. Destroy them. There can be no Black Messiah, particularly when the Black Panther group was like, we are armed and we are protecting the community. Kill them. Destroy them. There were laws in place. Still are. Learn about the real American history, because Black American history is American history. We're the unsavory part. But despite everything they did to us, still we rise. All right. I think I've said enough to our African brothers and sisters just to get the conversation going, and so that you guys can start understanding a bit more about us. Black folk, whoop whoop. After I did my Ancestry DNA, and after I met so many Africans from the continent, got this book. Here's why Black Americans, you want to get this book. Because 99% of us, our ancestry is all along the West African coast. You know, there were certain things that my grandmother and my great aunts and great uncles used to do, and I was like, you know how them old folk superstitions? Ain't no old folk superstition. It's DNA. Read this book. After you read this book, read this book. I'm finishing it up. Okay? So Black Americans, start with this book. Then this book. Okay, family. My Black American family. My African brothers and sisters. The last thing we want is for us to be united. And in this global situation, we need to understand each other. And make no mistake, it was not by accident that they had our African brothers and sisters thinking that we were crazy and criminal, just like all of the images we were given from Africa in America was that you guys were living in huts and still walking around in grass skirts. We need to learn more about each other. So, let's start. Let's get the conversation going. All right. Thank you, guys. Here's to Black power, Black unity, Black love. Whoop.